Hello, and welcome to How Did You Get There, the podcast. I have with me today Yanikie Tucker, not Yanikie, even though that's how her name is spelled. It's Yanikie Tucker. She is a Jamaican ambassador. I consider her to be a Jamaican ambassador because she has almost 200,000 people on Instagram who are absolutely captivated by Jamaican culture because of her recipes. A self-proclaimed foodie, and you'll have to explain to me what that means, Yanikie. A self-proclaimed foodie, she has done a phenomenal job of speaking about our culture, sharing our dishes sometimes that I haven't seen in a while, and dishes that I wish I could taste when I see them on her Instagram page. But I'm really happy to have Yanikie here with us today on How Did You Get There? So how did you get there? It's about the twists, turns, the trials, the triumphs that brought you to right where you are right now. So Yanikie, Jamdownfoodie, what caused you to decide that rather than just eating the food, you'd get a camera, record it, and share it with the world?
Well, I think I'd always been doing that on my personal pages. I was always sharing like what I cooked or the steps, something I made, or maybe a recipe. And during the pandemic, my friends and my cousins, they were like, it's time to just do this on a page that's dedicated to just this. And I'd always wanted to do it, but just very uncertain about how to get started. And they were like, just start. So I remember when I first started, I was like recording the stuff and then sending the clips to my cousin, who's a TV producer in New York City. And then she would edit the clips and send back the full videos to me. And then I would post. And then I started figuring out ways to do that on my own because it would take too long and it was too much work, sending the files and all of that. And I just started like reading articles and looking at other pages and looking at what they were doing. And I actually reached out to the guy who ran the page Proud Jamaicans. And I was like, do you promote other people's pages? Like, would you charge me to like promote my page and tell other Jamaicans about my page? And he was like, your stuff is actually not good enough for me to promote. And I was like, what? I was really taken aback, but his feedback was mostly positive, like it was constructive criticism.
Yes.
And he sent me a ton of articles to read and like blogs to look at and photos to look at. He's like, your stuff needs to be clear. These are the things that resonate with people. He showed me like pictures that were doing really, really well on his page and told me why they were doing really, really well. And he said, just follow in that light. And I started to do what he said. And he just started actually promoting my stuff for free.
Wow.
So just get up randomly and I'd see that Proud Jamaicans had reshared my stuff. And I would be like stunned and people started loving it and following me. So I just kept on going. So that was the genesis. That's the start of it. Just stepping out.
Yeah, it seems as though a lot of people stepped out of their comfort zone during COVID. Is it that you had more time? Is it that you think people were just interested in having content and being entertained? What is it that caused you to, at that particular point, commit to doing Jamdownfoodie?
I think it was a little bit of both, right? Like I definitely had more time. I was working from home. And like, I feel like people just wanted something to look at. Like,
yes.
There wasn't enough of things to do and people were really interested in learning to make new things or just being entertained on social media. So I feel like it's a little bit of both that caused it to take off.
And you know what? Let's shout out to Pro Jamaicans. Is it Pro Jamaican or Pro Jamaicans? Pro Jamaicans. I must admit, when you told me what his reaction was to your content, I was like, really? That's a little bit harsh. But you're really good then at taking feedback. How do you take feedback in such a way that you take the positives, well, not necessarily the positives, you take the bits that are constructive and you discard the bits that perhaps hurt your feelings? Because your feelings must have been hurt just a little bit.
Yeah. I think though, like even if your feelings are hurt about things like that, you kind of have to figure out a way to not take it personally. Yes. And I thought, this guy doesn't know me from a can of paint. So why would he
Yeah.
want to hurt me? Right. And he was probably likely just looking out for me and
Yeah.
giving me the things that I needed to like push forward, but to do it in a really good way. And then he had all the tools. Like he knew what was working. He knew what was working to grow his own page. His page at the time, I believe he had well over 50,000 followers when I reached out to him. So his page was very popular and he was doing it. So he was in the best position to give me advice. And so I was hurt because I thought my pictures were good and my videos were good. And like, how dare you? But again, you can't take everything personally. And I feel like you don't really grow if you don't like to hear a dissenting voice, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the reasons why Jamdownfoodie has grown so much is because people kept on pushing me to do more and to go further and asking for this and asking for that. And while it like annoyed me because it was like really filling up my plate, I felt like every single time I did what people wanted to see more of, or I gave a little bit more of myself, it only grew the business. And I was able to call it a business after a while because I was starting to make money from it. So, yeah, those dissenting voices can always be like a little prick. But if you don't take it all personally, then you allow yourself to become better for it.
Yeah. Let's start from the beginning because me listening to you with an accent, it's like, oh my gosh, Yanikie the Yankee. We're speaking to Yanikie the Yankee, but your beginnings actually is from a little coastal town in St. Mary. Big up all the St. Mary people, them. Yes. I'm so proud of being from St. Mary, even though Portland have a little piece of my heart now. But
Well, yeah,
I love Portland. But what was it like growing up in St. Mary?
I mean, I did not know, and I say this to people all the time, I did not know how poor we were until I came to America and then went back. And I was like, the place is very small. Like everything that I thought was larger than life. Like we had a clock tower in the center of town. You know that most of Highgate, all these places, they have a clock tower. And I guess as a kid, we saw that as like, oh, this is so fancy. This is so beautiful. And then you get to America and go to places like DC where, you know, there's a Capitol building and the White House and the monuments. And you're like, oh, God, it's so small. The roads are so small. Everything is so small. But because we grew up with so much love and so much care, we had like, I had no idea I was poor. I had no idea. I felt like I had everything and I had so much because of the way my grandmother took care of us. So I feel like I had a really good childhood, and not that I was like protected from the poverty around me, but I was guarded by like a really good upbringing and lots of love. So growing up as a country girl was like awesome. And so I wasn't like, I guess I wasn't overwhelmed or as enthused or whatever about the big lights. I mean, they were there, but I knew that I had like this wonderful childhood and upbringing and that I had a story to bring to this whole new big world that I was in. So growing up in St. Mary was fantastic.
And then you mentioned your grandmother. And when I think of Jamaica, I think about how multicultural, well, multi-generational, not multicultural, multi-generational the families are, because you'll have your auntie over there, you'll have a cousin, you'll have the grandmother. So it was never just that nuclear family. It was it was that extended community, because even the community would raise you. If you're walking on the road and you're doing something wrong, know that Miss T over there going to say, "Oi, what you doing?" And if she want to, you know, tap you a little bit, she might just tap you up because what are you doing? What was the significance of your grandmother in your life?
I mean, she was everything. Like she, for a time, she was like my mother. And I remember before my mother came to the United States, she moved out. And I was like, okay, bye. I'm not going with her. And she tells a story of, because I grew up with my other cousin, Ricky, And she tells a story of my grandmother and grandfather going to a conference. It was like some kind of church conference in Kingston. And she was watching us and it was getting so late. And she's like, you guys, you need to come back to my place and spend, and we wouldn't go. We just wouldn't go there. And that's how it was. Like my grandmother, I knew she was my grandmother. I knew who my mother was, but I always preferred to be with her. She is the one who taught me to cook. She just felt that it was the most important thing that a girl could learn to do. And she insisted that I was in the kitchen all the time. Like I think from like maybe 7.
Wow.
And it was to watch. Like she wasn't just using me as like, pass me this or pass me that, but I was supposed to be watching and learning and picking up all of the things that she was doing. And that was very important to her. She would always say, you're a girl, you have to know how to cook and you have to know how to do that very well. She was a traditionalist though. Like she hadn't worked since like her late 30s. She was a homemaker. She was always home with her kids, cooking and taking care of home. So that's what she knew. And I guess she was preparing me for a similar role.
Yeah.
I get to like be a modern woman, but
you get to be a modern woman. Your place is not in the kitchen, necessarily. You can inhabit any space that you want to inhabit. But, when you speak about cooking, because my memory of, I wasn't really allowed in the kitchen that much. So I learned to cook much later. I caught up. Don't worry, Yanique. All right. We can throw down a little thing. When you speak about cooking now, everybody has these air fryers, which I'm not an air fryer person. Give me my oven. But we had coal stoves. I remember getting burnt on my back with a coal stove. I remember hella bottom, hella top. I mean, for people who are not of Jamaican heritage, it's this way of cooking where I think it mimics the stove because they use the coal and they somehow get the fire underneath and the fire on top. But they would bake something called blue draw, something that I've not seen in ages. There were dishes like susumba. It tasted horrible. But, susumba they would have. But when I think of how people used to cook before and how we cook now, kind of the modern way of cooking, do you incorporate any of those kind of traditional ways of cooking into your cuisines now? Or is it that you've adapted it and modernized it a little bit?
I think it depends on what it is, right? And because I'm living here, it's harder to do. A lot of times I wish I was home and I could do like, cooking on a coal stove and show that. And when I am in Jamaica, I do videos like that. So I roast breadfruit outside on a coal stove.
Nice.
Cook ackee and saltfish outside. Like, whenever I get the chance to do it, I do it. But I don't use air fryers and those types of things in my videos much because I kind of want to kind of bring people back to the old ways and how things were done. So I try to keep it as simple and basic as possible. Like I just use the stove or the oven when I need to. Air fryer is just an easy bake oven anyway. It's an oven for your countertop. Like, so it's not, I don't know why people think it's so miraculous, but it's not.
That's very controversial right now. You've got some people who will fight you for that. They love their air fryers.
I know. It's just an easy bake oven. It's nothing spectacular.
A countertop easy bake oven.
It is. It really is. And you're just cooking food at really, really high temperatures. And a lot of people's ovens are not convection, so the heat is not circulating in that kind of way. But it's doing that in an air fryer, so you're speeding up the amount of time that something takes to cook. But that's all it is.
Yeah.
No miracles here. Yeah, I keep things very simple. I try to keep them as authentic as possible. Right now, I'm under fire on my page because I just cooked red pea soup, and I know I wasn't doing it the traditional way, but I was doing it the way
I saw that.
And it's controversial because I think people also, they want that from me. They want me to put out things authentically because that's why they followed. And so when I do something and I deviate from the norm, they are not happy. And they let me know. Because Jamaican people,
Jamaicans are very vocal.
So right now, I'm under fire for my red pea soup. But Most of the things I do, I would say I try to do it authentically. I try to do it simply. I try to bring people back to the olden days.
Yeah.
I haven't made blue draws because I don't have the banana leaf.
The banana leaf, yeah.
I refuse to make it any other way. So maybe when I'm on a trip in Jamaica, I'll make it when I could do it outside, where I could quail the banana leaf and do the whole 9 yards.
I'll look out for that. Do you believe that? Because even me mentioning blue draws, if I mentioned it to my boys, they'd be like, huh? Because they know what draws means in the Jamaican sense, right? So if I mentioned that, they'd look at me in horror and they'd say, oh, mommy, don't. Do you think that we've lost some of those traditional Jamaican dishes along the way?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think Jamaican food is always going to evolve. I mean, cuisine in general is always going to evolve. But I think our food has evolved a lot. And I know so because with writing my book, I had to go deep into the history. So I'd been surrounded by all of these old cookbooks and history books written about Jamaican food, why we eat what we eat, where all this stuff comes from. And I was able to see how much things have changed.
Yeah.
And I think diaspora cooking has a lot to do with it, right? So folks who have left the island and they're now living in the UK or Canada or the US, they have more access to all of these ingredients and they experiment with them and throw them in. So before you know it, something like escovitch fish, for example, that does not have bell peppers in it traditionally. Nowadays, you'll see that on social media and it'll have 3 different types of bell peppers.
And by bell peppers, you mean sweet peppers or
sweet peppers. Saltfish fritters, 3 different types of bell peppers in saltfish. That's unheard of, right? That's not how you traditionally make those things. But I feel because of the availability of it, they're here, they taste good, and they're cheap. And so people just start putting them in things, and it's a whole evolution in the taste of our food. And I feel like with diaspora cooking, there's been some mixing of stuff. So we know that other small island people use this thing called green seasoning. I've seen a lot of people put it out there that there's a Jamaican green seasoning. I don't know of it. I've never seen it. I've never used it. Right. But that's starting to happen where people are representing Jamaican food and saying, here's Jamaican green seasoning, putting it on oxtail. It's constantly evolving, constantly changing. And we're not really eating things like blue draws as much anymore. I don't know if you remember this thing called asham. Do you remember asham?
Is that the thing you used to throw on the ground and it used to pop?
Well, that was a game too.
What was that called?
Asham was dried corn. So the dried corn, they used to make hominy. They grind it out and mix it with sugar. You could put spices in it and you eat it like how you would eat in the middle of your hand, Horlicks or Milo or something like that. Those types of things people don't really eat anymore.
No, because I can't even remember that. There are things that I go home and I don't see anymore. So there was this thing called donkey jawbone, the hardest thing that you could ever eat. And I'm wondering, why did we even eat that? Why would we do that to our teeth? But I don't see that anymore. There's a lady at the church that I go to when I'm in Jamaica. Miss Cherry. Hi, Miss Cherry. She used to make a mean grater cake. I don't really see people doing that anymore. Or she would do, what's the red and white one called?
That's the grater cake.
And then
the gizzada is the one that
has the gizzada. Yes, she do gizzada and she do grater cake, and then even drops. I don't see those things anymore.
No.
Is our culture slowly dying? And how do we preserve it?
I kind of feel so. I kind of feel like maybe the younger generations have been exposed to some of these things. So maybe they've been to Jamaica and a grandma or an aunt or somebody might have made it, but they don't know how to make it. Yeah. And they live in a foreign country where they don't see it often. And I think that's why the work that I do, and I'm not the only one who does it, there are other content creators in this space that, go go all the way back and make these foods and show people how to make them. I think
Yeah.
that work is so important because that's the way to preserve it, is to say to the younger generations, your grandmother, and people say this to me all the time, which is really touching. My grandmother's gone. My aunt's gone. I really love this thing. I had no idea how to make it. I used your recipe and now I know how to make it. And I'm teaching my kids to make it. Like, that's the kind of stuff that really like energizes me and keeps me in this space, is to know that like there's so much value and meaning to the work that I'm doing, and that people are actually preserving, as you say, preserving our cultural heritage through food. So that's like the best part of it.
Yeah. Let's go back a little bit, because I remember growing up in Jamaica, if you weren't going to be a teacher or a lawyer or a doctor or a banker, then more or less your career wouldn't have been good enough. When you look at where you are now, so you're doing first of all, we didn't have any internet. There was no, I was saying to somebody, when we were going to school, we had to get the encyclopedia, flip through, write everything on the pages. If we could photocopy a one picture, we did that, cut it out, paste it. And that was us. We didn't know what plagiarism was. We were just writing word for word. But the world has evolved so much, and so has, your career. You're not necessarily doing something that's traditional. You're using the World Wide Web, and you're connected with people all over. I can imagine that your following would be not necessarily just located in one geographical location. Could you have envisioned that this is what Yanique, little girl from Port Mario, would be doing with her life?
No idea. I had no clue. And I had no intentions like that when I started. Like, honestly, really just wanting to share what I was having fun doing.
Yes.
And then just watching that like move from strength to strength, I feel like, by people actually saying, hey, you made this thing. Can you give me a recipe? And I'm like, what? First of all, I never learned by a recipe, like anybody giving me like steps written down or measurements even. So I had to unlearn a lot of the things that I knew, and actually started cooking with measuring cups and spoons, which was like, what? Like, so difficult. Cooking and writing everything down at the same time. So there's a lot of me that like just grew in this space, but I'm happy that I did it, because I feel like I made a career out of it for myself that I wouldn't have done otherwise. I remember going to college and telling my college professor that I wanted to go into culinary arts. And he's like, you should. If that's what you love, do it. And then I finished my degree and I came home and I said, Mommy, here's the degree. Here's what you wanted. Now I want to go to culinary school. And she's like, absolutely not. Go get a job. Like, why would you go to culinary school? And I went and I tried to figure out how to get in. And they were like, you need $30,000, but because this is not your first degree, we're not going to give you financial aid. And we would need your mother to co-sign on a private loan. And I said, Mommy, like, seriously, I did what you wanted. Can I now just like go? And she's like, absolutely not. I will not support you in doing that. And I watch her now be like so happy and proud of what I'm doing in food. But just that was never, like you said, it's not what our parents want for us. It's not considered a real career, something you should be aspiring to do. But it really is legitimate. And there are people out there who make way more money than I do. I'm trying to get to their level. But there are people out there that this is their sole job. They don't do anything else. This is all they do. And they make a ton of money from it. And they get a lot of notoriety from it. So I'm just happy that like I pressed the button and I did it.
Yeah. And you know what? Thank you so much for also encouraging me, because I remember having that conversation with you and you were just like, just do it. Just start. Just start. So, obviously I'm at the beginning of my journey, but a lot of times if you wait on that perfect scenario, or if you think about what good should look like, you'll never leave the blocks. You'll still be in the blocks when everybody else is at the finish line. So good on you for doing something that you absolutely love, because I guess this validates that whole saying that if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. But what they didn't tell you is you
Yeah.
can actually make money off it too, eh?
Yeah. There's so much like food media. There's so much money to be made.
Yeah.
And like I said, there are people who are millionaires doing it. You got to find your sweet spot and get into it. But everybody has a lane, right? Everybody, and there's so many people that do Jamaican food, and they're in this space and they're in their own lane. So even though they're doing the same recipes and they have the same sort of niche as I do, like our stuff looks very different. Like my approach is very different. So there's always room for you. There's always a space for you. And you just have to start. Really. Like I look back at my first video and I laugh because I'm like, this is horrible. It's horrible. But I had to do that first video, right? That first video had to happen so that I could move on and get better. So
okay. I'm going to change it up a little bit, right? And have a little bit of fun with you, because people always say to me, you know, if I'm going to Jamaica, one of the things that they ask me is, where should I go? What places should I visit? But one of the questions that I absolutely love is the question about what should I eat? So if people are going to Jamaica and you've got 5 things that they must try in Jamaica, what are those 5 things?
Okay, so you have to eat traditional jerk. Traditional jerk, because the way it's cooked in foreign countries is trash.
It's like, not jerk.
It's not. It's not. So you have to have traditional jerk. And there are lots of like jerk centers and jerk stands. I personally think the best place to get like jerk chicken is probably just like in any town square from a pan man. That's probably the best place. But to get like things like jerk pork or jerk sausage and things like that, I pick Portland every time. So I would say go to Boston and get good jerk.
Okay.
You have
I co-sign that one.
You have to eat fresh local fruit. So for like the fruit stands, you are not going to get a star apple, a naseberry, a Otahiti apple in America. Like it's just not here. And if you find sugarcane and mangoes and those other things, the quality is just not the same. Like I remember going home and buying pineapples from a guy right at the side of Nova Scotia Bank. He's been there since I was a kid and he's still there cutting pineapples every day. It's like heaven in a little bag. So eat the fresh local fruit. Don't be afraid that you can't eat street food. Like the best experience with food in Jamaica, I would say, is eating like the locals do.
Yes.
Get yourself like a cup of soup from the soup guy in the town. It's probably going to be the best cup of soup you've ever had. Like you're not going to go anywhere and like get that.
Okay. I would not put soup in my list. So you're at 3.
Right.
Because I mean,
when you know soup is so important to us that even in 90-degree weather, we eat soup.
But that's like Brits drinking tea all year round.
Well, you know, it's not important. So you should know what the buzz is all about. Like, what is this crave all about? Why do these people have to eat soup in 90-degree weather? Once you eat it from a soup guy, you'll know why.
Okay, so we've got the jerk, chicken or pork or sausage or whatever, and we've got the local fresh fruits. Yeah. And we've got the soup.
Yep. Seafood, get fresh seafood. So, okay. I mean, I've been to a number of places that have really good stuff. I've been to Little Ochi, which I feel like that was St. Elizabeth. But it's kind of like the same setup as Hellshire, only they do this jerk fish thing that's unbelievable. Hellshire, of course, is standard, and I feel like you can get that type of seafood even in Ocho Rios. If you go to the Fisherman's Beach, you could get that, like fried fish, escovitch fish, festival, the 9 yards. You have to get that. Okay. Where that was number 4.
I don't want to be disappointed. So I'm just waiting because you miss off 3 of my things that's a must do in Jamaica.
You have to get patty.
From where? But from where? Because I'm not plugging anybody. But for me, there's only one place I want the patty from.
Don't say Tasty.
Don't make me hang up this. If it is not, hold on. This is very important to me. If it is not a tasty patty, I do not want it. I do not want it. And I was in Jamaica the other day, and I was in Ocho Rios, and the juicy beef was there. And the tasty lockdown, I was traumatized.
Yes, because again, we have to listen to the locals. I think we have an obsession with Tasty because we can't get over what it used to be.
Okay.
When we were kids, for real, when we were much younger, like maybe even in our early 20s, because in my early 20s, I went back to Jamaica, like, I feel like it was still good. It's not what it used to be.
Yeah, I don't know. Who has a better crust? Who has a better crust than Tasty? Please tell me.
Right now, Tasty doesn't have anything.
I mean, Tasty, I guess you won't be sponsoring either. So
like, the amount of meat isn't right, the seasoning isn't right, the pepper isn't right. Like, it's just not what it used to be. And I think for a lot of people, especially people who they left Jamaica and they lived there, and you say to them Tasty isn't good anymore, and it brings up like rage for them, right?
But I'm feeling that way right now.
It's not as good as it used to be.
Okay, so we'll have a patty.
Have a patty.
It's still going to be better than any patty I've ever had here. So
Correct.
I'll have a patty.
So that's the next thing that I was saying. Like, I posted a patty recently and people are like, I would never look at it's juicy beef. And I'm like, you would devour this patty because compared to what you get abroad, moons away.
You kind of, so where are we at 5?
We are at 5. I feel like I could.
How dare you go to Jamaica and buy soup on the roadside and you don't buy a box food with some rice and peas, some fried chicken?
Throw in a box food. You have to have.
To have a box food.
Have a box food. You do. You have to.
And I mean, this is one of the weirdest things, right? Because it don't matter who you buy the box food from. It is gonna be the best food in a box that you've, or a styrofoam container, that you've ever had in your life.
Yeah, it's true. A corner shop box food for like $3. Yeah.
And I feel as though, I'm sorry, I've got to throw something else in.
Which one? What you got?
So you see, if you go to Jamaica, you know, eat KFC. Something wrong with it.
Well,
I know it's junk food and it's not like if you go to Jamaica and you don't,
but it is a must try. If you're on the island, you must. And I think for a lot of Americans, they go like, what? Because KFC is theirs.
No.
And it's probably the worst fast food you can get here, to be honest.
Well,
you never go to KFC here and see a long line. You'll never go to KFC here and the drive-thru is full. Like, they don't even eat their KFC. And so for them, it's like, what you talking about? But that's for real. If you go to Jamaica, you must have our KFC.
Can I tell you, the other day, I was in Jamaica. It wasn't a holiday. Had a family emergency. Went home. In and out. I got a call. Babe, bring back some KFC for me. I'm like, are you kidding me? No word of a lie. My mother couldn't bring me because she wasn't well. I took the nuts for the express from Ocho Rios. Yes. I had to buy the KFC, which the lady told me she didn't have any barbecue, but she had some hidden around the back, and she heard my plea and she gave me the barbecue as well. So I had barbecue, hot and spicy, and original.
Wow.
And I traveled with that KFC from Ocho Rios to Montego Bay, got to Montego Bay and found out that I was at the airport on the wrong day. Because I was supposed to leave the following day. But I think I was too stressed with everything going on. But anyways, I digress. sat in the airport then for about 4 hours or 5, then sat on a flight for 9 hours, then drove home, 2 hour drive. And when that box opened, I mean, there is no way any food safety expert would say that it
And
was
the
okay to eat.
food, right, that's true. It was
Oh man.
probably a little touch, but we're gonna eat it because
We're gonna eat it.
we can't get that here.
Yeah.
Just
So back to you, Miss Jamdownfoodie, because you've kind of you've diversified so much. So you had an Instagram page, but when we go on that Instagram page, we see a cookbook, and
mm-hmm,
it almost feels like an homage to your grandmother based on the
mm-hmm,
title. But
mm-hmm.
also when I was on your page as well, I saw that you have a trip that you're planning to Bali. So tell me more
Mm-hmm.
about some of the other things that you're doing.
Um, all of those things kind of fell in my lap. So we started with just the page and then people asking for recipes, and I was doing recipes and just post, and they're like, well, it's not that clear and I have to keep going back to the page and I have to keep refreshing. So then I created a blog. I was like, well, here's a dedicated space online where you could go for all the recipes. Right now it's under construction. I'm trying to get it to look better, be more user friendly. And then I started TikTok, which is a whole
Oh, you're on TikTok. I'm clearly a millennial, but anyways.
whole other world. So I went on to TikTok and then I went on to YouTube. All of this was like by request, like people being like, and then companies started reaching out, asking me to promote products and paying me to promote products. And the company that's planning the Bali trip was sort of the same. They obviously make money off of the trips, but they want, influencers to be able to travel with the people who follow them. And they wanted to curate like a foodie experience in Bali. And so that's how that came about. And same thing with the cookbook, the publishing house like reached out and said, hey, like we want to show people that someone like you can actually publish a book if you want to.
Wow. Yeah.
So all happened by chance. I've actually never pitched myself to any company. I'm actually scared to do it, but I feel like I need to get into it now, like get braver about pitching myself, but never pitch myself to any company or anything like that. They all just like fall into my lap. So by the grace of God, and the time and the work I'm doing, that's the reward. But yeah, I have a lot of irons in the fire, I would
I love
say.
that. But that's it's interesting because you're very confident and you're doing so well. What is the source of that fear? What are you afraid of?
I don't know. I think every human is in some way afraid of the word no. And I feel like the companies I would pitch, or the brands I would pitch are brands that I really, really want, right? Like I really want this partnership. And so it would feel like shit if can I say shit? It would feel like shit if I was to like reach out to a brand I really want and for them to say no. So I think I have to like learn to make peace with that
Yeah.
the no's will come. And maybe there's something I have to do that's like more. I have to go do the prerequisites and then come back to try to get the yes a second time. But yeah, there's always that fear that you're not going to get what you want. So
Is there anything on your wish list that you're willing to share?
my wish list, I really want, and maybe I should just put it out there in the universe and say it out loud, but I really want to cook like for an audience of some type.
Ooh.
Like in front of people, or like for a show or a series or something like that. Like I want to do that. I feel like that's my next.
That seems like a natural progression. You're already cooking in front of people, albeit virtually. So the next step would be to move from kind of being behind the camera and being there and engaging with your audience and seeing their faces when they taste your food.
Right. I did it once and it was so fun. And I was like, oh, I really like this. Like that is my next big goal.
Well, for 2024, you have to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to you've put it out there. So we're waiting.
To God's ears.
Yeah. Well, you're going to make it happen. Listen, probably like I am such a paradox because I'm actually really shy. And when I tell people that, they're like, you're not shy. I'm actually, no, but I am actually really shy, but I'm not really having a shame. But I do have a lot of shame because even with this, I have been messaging some people and I'm like, hi, just type in hi. This might be a little bit presumptuous, but I'm launching a podcast called da 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 da. Would you be interested? And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, people might ignore it or they might not see it. I feel like the right person might see it. And then it might be something. So if you don't put yourself out there, then you're really saying no to yourself. Nobody's saying no to you. You've already said no to yourself.
Yeah. You kind of have to be a little bit audacious.
A little bit.
Yeah. You have to have some audacity because, a lot of times people would say you are not where you need to be in order to have this collab with me, in order to talk to me, in order to, like there are people who will say you need to have or you need to be at this level. Mm-hmm. But I think you never know until you try. And maybe a little of that audacity might impress somebody.
But I also feel as though everybody started somewhere. So that's sometimes a little bit disappointing because I would like to think that regardless of where you are in life, you need to remember your beginnings. And that was my lesson when I came to the UK, because I keep saying to people, man, I never have an ounce of humility. You know how we are as Jamaicans, we're very larger than life. And I didn't have an ounce of humility. But I think it's important to remember where you're coming from, because my grandmother used to say to me, or my mother, somebody said it, the same people that you pass on the way up is the same people that you pass on the way down. And she also said, the higher the this might be, it can be seen as a slur, but the higher the monkey climb, the more Mbati exposed. So for me, it's just this thing about recognizing that from your lofty level, don't forget that you can get right down the rungs. So, humility is really important. But hey ho, if you're watching and you're interested in partnering with Jamdownfoodie, Yanique, you know where to find her at Jamdown, JAMDOWN Foodie. So I'm conscious of time. You're very busy. So I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to play another little game with you because I'm really interested, right? If you had to choose between oxtail and curry goat, what would you choose?
Curry goat.
Okay.
So here's the story. Cool story, right? I had a sister goat. Like literally her name was Sister. My grandmother bought her as a kid when I was born, and she's supposed to be my sister. We're supposed to grow up together. And I love curry goat so much that we ate her. So yes.
Some stories you keep
So there's really like no denying that curry goat is the thing for me, and it is for my family. As a matter of fact, I don't even really know. I tell people all the time, I don't really know oxtail. I know cowtail, where my grandmother went to the butcher in the bay, and she'd buy a whole cowtail. She had it chopped up. It had the skin around it, like still on it. So that's what she used to cook, and it would kind of taste like a mixture of cow foot and oxtail. But that's what I knew. I didn't know oxtail this way, and getting cowtail was like a special occasion, like maybe Easter, maybe Christmas, like special occasion dinner. We weren't really that obsessed with it.
Yeah.
I think obsession with oxtail is very new.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Oxtail was so expensive when we were growing up that, yeah, for me to be able to just buy it and eat it now, I'm buying it and eating it, okay? Because I can.
I mean, I get upset because I feel like it's exploitation. It used to be refused meat. It used to be $2.99 a pound, and now it's like sometimes $18 a pound. I refuse to buy it.
Yeah, it's very expensive. I was actually speaking to a very good friend of mine at work. Hi, Asha. And I was explaining to her that a lot of the foods that we have is from our it's like a retention from our past, because when we were on the plantations, we weren't getting the steaks.
No, we
So
had to
whatever.
eat cow foot and cow tail,
Absolutely.
and pig foot and pigtail and all these
And
things.
chicken foot.
Right, that
Yeah.
they want on their tables.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we want to, like, what they say, Tanyana McFashion. But yeah, like, I feel like it's sort of an exploitation. Now they know that it's popular and whatever, they want to make, money on stuff they would have discarded. The only people they used to sell oxtail to, like big restaurateurs that used to buy it to make stock. Like if you're like a really good restaurant and you want to do everything from scratch, they would buy it and they'd make beef stock.
Yeah.
Or island people. And island people, they would sell it to them for little or nothing. And now they want to sell it for all this money. I'm just like, I'm not into it.
Yeah. Do you find, because as you speak about island people, do you find that there's a lot of conflict almost between the islands on social media in terms of, this is mine, I own it, we do this better than you do? Because sometimes when I go in, I love the comments, by the way. I just live for the comments. It's like I'm watching the content, but not really, because I'm just engrossed in the comments. Why is it that we can't just accept that okay, I wasn't gonna say what I was gonna say. I was just messing around. But why is there so much conflict in the comments about kind of the superiority of food?
Well, I want to say, in the humblest of ways, that Jamaica has everything else, right? Like, of all the islands, we're the most popping. I want to say. And so
I'm not trying to alienate anybody this early. I'm gonna be diplomatically correct.
I don't have to be, because I'm wearing Jamaica on my sleeves every day. So I'll take the heat for you. But they don't want to give us food as well. Like, they just don't want to take. But we're probably one of the only islands that people go to for the food. Like, people are like, I want to go to Jamaica because I want to try the food. And I feel like that's important to not forget. But also, I think our similarities are beautiful, and people try to, find ways to make that ugly. Like, I made pakasa the other day, and the most beautiful thing about the comments was that, like, there's so many different islands that came and said, we have the same thing, we just have a different name.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I feel like those similarities are things that we should honor and cherish and be happy about. And there are people who will come and say, Jamaicans stole this from us. Like, when and why?
But I think there is some truth to, and I'm not suggesting that we've stolen anything from anybody. Jamaica's motto is out of many one people.
Right.
And that's why you have roti, but you still have the curry dishes. So you have that kind of Asian fusion, but you do have the Afro dishes as well. So we've got a lot of different kind of cultures. And we're one big melting pot, and we're really aware of that, because ackee, we know that ackee never originated in Jamaica, but it's very much our national dish. Do you think we know enough about the influences, that have kind of informed the food that we have? Do we even know, or do we just take it for granted that it's Jamaican?
We don't know, but I also don't think that we know that the demographics exist pretty much the same in all of these islands. There is Afro influence, Indian influence, of course, indigenous influence in all of the Caribbean islands. And so that's why we end up with dishes that kind of look the same.
Yeah.
Also, there's a lot of like traveling and communication between those islands over the years. Like, none of these islands really stayed isolated in any kind of way. Jamaicans were everywhere, Trinidadians were everywhere. There's lots of traveling and working and intermingling and intermixing. Of course, some of these things, we're going to exchange them along the way. And I feel like that's something to celebrate. But I feel like in general, people are going to find ways to troll and to make a mess out of everything.
Yeah.
What you need to
So
do.
before you go, I've just got a couple of questions for you. And this one you're going to probably find really difficult. If
Mhm.
you had to choose one dish
Whew,
that that represented who you are and what you stand for, what would that dish be?
Jesus. I mean, I'd honestly say Aki. Be-
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, because Aki is like, it's the one thing that we have that I feel like everybody has access to. And it must be you that just say, I don't want Aki. It's always, and even today, like I just got back from Jamaica and I bought Aki and it was probably $200 a dozen, right?
Hmm.
It's still one of the cheapest things you can find. It's one of the most versatile things. You could do Aki and saltfish. You could do Aki and nothing, just Aki with the seasonings. You could do Aki and chicken back, Aki and pork, Aki and whatever. I mean, like you could put it with almost any protein. I put it with chickpeas or lima beans or whatever if I want like a vegan version of it. But I feel like it's the one dish that it's so Jamaican and every Jamaican has access to it. It's like if you're hungry, dying of hunger, there's probably a tree somewhere
There's
around
probably a tree.
that you could get like
Yeah.
and you could do something with that.
Yeah.
And I feel that that's so symbolic of who we are as a people. It's like we're so resourceful
Mm-hmm.
and we can make something out of anything. And so I feel like that dish like is super important to me because of that versatility and flexibility and access. It's not like oxtail or whatever else or pork or whatever that you may have to have some money to be able
Mm-hmm.
to eat that kind of food or eat that kind of way. You could put it in seasoned rice. I mean, what can't you do with Aki?
Yeah, it's brilliant. And then kind of finally, you spoke about your Jamaican-ness. You were saying, I literally wear the flag. What does your Jamaican heritage mean to you? Because, for me, I didn't realize how much of my identity was steeped in my Jamaican-ness until I was away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't imagine I can't imagine a version of me that isn't Jamaican. Like I can't even
Mm-hmm.
visualize what that looks like. What
Yeah.
does your Jamaicanness mean to you?
I mean, everything. It means everything to me. I often say, and I say it jokingly, but I really mean it. Like, if God allows me to come back, please put me back on the island. Like, I want to be able to say that I am from this place. I'm so proud of like our culture, our people, all of the things that we've done. Like, I feel like every time you hear about a Jamaican, you hear about somebody who's like fought through some hardship or hard battle or something and made it on the other side. I feel like we're so resilient and strong. And maybe that's like deep rooted in like who they took from Africa, who ended up on the island. Like, I don't know where that comes from, but there's something special in us that is so magical. And I'm so proud of it.
Yeah, I'm really proud to be Jamaican too. Well, you know what? Thank you so, 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 so very much
You're
for
welcome. I
for
was happy to do
joining.
it. It was
Oh,
fun.
thank you. It means so much to me. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you or step into
Woo.
your world?
So I'm on Instagram, Jamdownfoodie. I'm on www.jamdownfoodie.com. I am on TikTok. I am on YouTube. I am on Pinterest.
Okay.
Everywhere.
You're everywhere. Just type in Jamdownfoodie and you're sure to
Yeah.
find her.
Yes.
And you'll have a chance to win Yanique's cookbook. So stay tuned because we're going to record a little thing. We're going to try and figure out how this works. But stay tuned. Remember to support, buy the book. If you don't buy the book, try and win the book. Follow Yanique. And of course, follow me at hdygt.pod on Instagram. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.